When you don't get a response out of somebody, take in your subject line of your email a number and put second try. By the time someone hits a third try, they will feel so guilty that they will respond to you. Works every time. It's the fastest way to kind of hack and get a response out of people.
Can I just skip to third try?
I really did, I do. Oh my God, I have done that. If something's time sensitive, I will hit third try the first time. And spam filter. It was horrible.
That's awesome.
All right, what are the immediate benefits?
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, go for it.
Yeah, I just want to throw one last thing out there. From having not been in a school for a couple of years, for me, what I've actually tried to do is go right to the publishers and game developers and game designers, and I just ask. I just straight up ask them, hey, would you be willing to give me some free stuff? I do, and sometimes people are responsive to it, and other times they're not. But you can't lose anything by asking. I mean, even if you send it to info@, you just try. I don't do that with small business owners, right? Because their margins are so thin. But with publishers and larger companies, I'm more willing to just ask if you would be willing to donate a class set of these things.
And kind of along what I think you are 100% right, because that's what I do for a living, is I ask people to give me stuff. And you guys have touched on something that's incredibly important. You want to think about things that are mutually beneficial. I actually got someone to give me free cake for Gen Con one year so I could hand it out at a booth. Now literally, I looked for the baker who was the closest to Gen Con and said, look, I know you need some dough. It's gamers, we all like to eat. Now the funnier part is everyone thought it was suspect. They literally, I could not hand out free cake. It didn't work. It was an utter failure. We had 3 flat sheet cakes. Now, meanwhile, I guess failure win. It was a win for me, but, there we go. But ask. There's no such thing as a bad question. So, immediate benefits of gamification.
Student engagement. I'll just throw it out there. Immediate. You do something really cool like that, students are going to be engaged immediately.
I don't know how immediate it is, but it is pretty quick. Culture change in your classroom. Changing culture is going to be, huge for buy-in. So I think once you change the way you approach your class and the way you approach material, I think that's going to really get to that culture change.
Even as Ilya said, if you're prepared to fail and it does fail and it's horrible, they can tell that you're trying. And then next week you come back, you try something else and it fails horribly. They know that you're trying. And they know that they can feel it on you when something goes wrong and you're like, I got to do better next time. That's going to help build your reputation as somebody who cares. And personally, I feel like that's benefited me. My students cut me some slack because they know that whatever I'm going to put out there, it's something that I believe in and I'm going to try it. So that's the immediate effect.
I think what Eric spoke to earlier about, when I asked him that question about kids kind of getting down on each other, when he said he does various types of challenges and types of games, to me what that also speaks to is that it provides a really elegant opportunity to offer instruction to diverse styles of learning, right? Like it's not just going to be successful for the critical thinkers in the room or the readers or however intelligence you want to label it as. That by offering different types of games, by different styles of learning, you open up opportunities for the kids who might not normally feel successful in school to be really good, to be the rock stars in the room, and that I've seen be remarkably successful.
That's awesome. So, how can the students participate as managers? And I can't wait to hear this.
On the screen right now for Werewolf, usually the first game I facilitate, maybe the second one if it's rough, and then I pass it off to a student. Sometimes I play, and I'm always the first to die. They like to get revenge on me for some reason. So if you're playing a game, play with them. And let the students take control. That catchphrase game that I was describing, that's entirely student run. Once they get the fun and they can pursue the fun, they will do it. and you just have to just wander around and make sure that they're doing the right thing.
I think play democratizes the classroom because everybody, once you join in on the game, then you are like them. You're no longer in charge. And that can be difficult for us as teachers because we're so used to, strong arming the classroom. But I think when you put kids in opportunities or give them chances to be leaders or to run the classroom, I think they have a ton of fun with that. The class I mentioned where they make their own games and they have to, you have to play test it. That kid is naturally in charge. They have to tell you how to play the game. So now they're in a position, and you all know this, they love to teach us stuff. Now they're in a position of being, like you, and they want to do their best job as you. When I had a kid explain to the class what Snapchat is, and I still don't get it, but at least it was like, she explained it, I was like, oh, okay, that's what that is. And then she left, and I was like, I don't understand what that was. But at least, like, she saw what it was like to have everybody's attention on you and to kind of depend on you. And I think kids can kind of rise to that occasion when you give them that opportunity.
You know what kids love, too, is choice. A huge proponent in class choice, student choice. Whenever I have my students do an assessment or any activity, I allow there to be either at least two open doors. And I give them the options, like, here's the 2 doors we can go through. Which one do you guys want to go through? Sometimes there's more than 2 doors. And when they choose it, there's ownership. So, yes, it's kind of student-led that they're making the decision, but I dictate what the decisions are. So I ultimately have the power, but I'm giving them some of the power by offering doors that can be opened. So, like I said, everything I try to do, I try to make at least one or two alternative choices in my classroom so the kids buy in. And that works tremendously. If you don't offer a lot of choice in your classroom, please try it. It's amazing.
I would just reinforce that choice is absolutely go for it as much as you can. When kids create their own games, one of the things that I'm a proponent of is as they're creating the parts of the game, whether you do it in lessons or blocks or however you're going to offer that opportunity for kids to build their game, have them write the instructions for that particular part of the game as they're building it. Then come back at the end and revisit their instructions, see if they require revision. So they've built the game, the board, the materials, and the instruction, and then play test those games. And for playtesting, what has to happen is a real-world scenario, right? You go to a game shop, you buy a game, you take the box home, and then you play it. And if the instructions or the YouTube video are not viable, it's really going to impact the joy that you and your friends get out of playing the game. So when we teach these, we ask kids to prepare the game, the materials, the board, the instructions. They have to leave it on the table and walk away. They can't be there saying, oh, no, that's not what you do. You move here next. Or, no, that's not what the card is for, right? Because if the instructions aren't done well enough, then that's a fault on their end, and that's a modification that they have to make when they come back after play testing. So it's another way to offer the kids the opportunity to be in charge, and also give them a real-world failure, which is necessary for our students.
It always comes back to werewolves. All right, speaking of werewolves, we all have to be accountable. There's always the wolf at the door saying, is what you do effective? How do you guys track it?
Do we have to talk about data? Okay.
I can jump in.
Yeah. Do it.
Eric's giving me the eye. I don't know what I'm supposed to talk about, but I'll try.
Do it.
So, I'll talk about Game On. When we first thought about how we wanted to teach game design, we broke it down into 7 game design principles. And I'm not going to be able to remember them all now, but we have mechanics, interactivity, aesthetic appeal, content. That's 4. I'm 3 short. Instructions, thank you. Somebody's reading. They're clearly in the handout that I gave you. So they're all there.
Challenge point to your group.
So thank you. We built a rubric that evaluates how well the students have built each of those things out. And I think it's on a 0 to 10 point scale with maybe 4 or 5 different categories of analysis for each of those principles. So that's an example of one way that what we do is we say, all right, so if which we have associated each of the lessons in Game On with the 21st century standards, and then the rubric assesses how each of those are being met, then there's a correlation to data that you can point to for your administration and say, all right, these kids are building these games, and here's all the 21st century skills that they're addressing. If you want to go that far, you could say 75% of my class is doing X, Y, and Z, and take it to that degree of granularity. But the assessment rubric is already there for you. It is tricky and it's challenging as we, as educators, push the boundaries of what we want to teach. It's going to butt up against the establishment, right? That pop culture based education in some ways is still really a fringe topic, and I think that those of you that are in the room are the ones that get to be the trendsetters. You're the ones that get to push the boundaries and to say, you know what, I know this is a little bit awkward and you don't really understand what I'm doing, but come on in. Listen to the conversations my students are having, right? See what they're doing. See how motivated they are. See how democratized the classroom is. And then let's have the conversation about whether or not it's okay for me to do this. Rather than just saying, your kids are playing Tetris? No, turn it off. I don't want to see it. So the question about data is an important one. And I think it's also relevant to say that right now, at this particular juncture, there's an inadequate way of entirely measuring the effects of gamification in the classroom. And I think that's okay. I think that as educators, as trendsetters, it's our job to say, what's best for my students first, right? And then after that, we can look at quantifying it, putting it on a newspaper. Soapbox, yeah.
All right. Do we have anything else that we need to bring up? Or should we open it up to questions?
I think we can open it up.
Sure. Yeah, with questions.
Questions, please.
All right. You, sir.
I'm curious about, I'll be honest, I have trouble with time management. So, how long do you take on teaching them the game, having them play the game? Do you do it all in one period? Do you spread it out?
That's a great question. Jason and I were at a panel in Denver Comic-Con, and there was a woman there with her students talking about how they've created a role-playing game. And how they play the role-playing game, and she had videos, and she had her students there talking about it. And my first question to her was, how long does this take? And she said anywhere from a week to a month, depending on how much time you have and how much you want to put into it. So yeah, if you're trying to teach your kids Magic the Gathering and you want them to create a set based on a book or a scientific principle or a historical time period, it's going to take a lot of time. But if you want to just teach them the color scheme, and then have them put that color scheme on maybe presidents of the 20th century, that's going to take a lot less time. So I agree with you. It's really hard to time manage. So you just have to make sure that you're not biting off more than you can chew, which I've done plenty of times, and it's trial and error. I'm like, oh, I'm going to do this. And I'm like, oh my God, this is going to take 5 years. And I'm like, what am I going to do? And then, I think it was what Jason said too. It's just like, or somebody up here said it, you just have to be honest. You have to be honest with your kids. And if something goes wrong, tell them, guys, I tried something cool here and it went wrong. We got to make a left turn. And if you're honest with them and open, I've never had kids say, oh, thanks for wasting my time. They appreciate that something new is attempting to happen in that class. And if it goes wrong, they're like, dang, this dude just admitted that he was wrong. I like this guy.
Right.
And
it's okay to make mistakes.
Yeah. And so I would say, keep your time management at the forefront, but if you mess it up, just pull a U-turn and admit what you did. You bit off more than you could chew, and it'll be all right.
A less risky way too to explore the time management piece is to run it as a club first. You got to figure out what works for your schedule, but a lunchtime club or an after-school club, and then you go through 1 or 2 iterations of it, and you figure out like, oh, this might take 7 hours, and then you can allocate that amount of time for it.
I teach AP psychology, so we don't have time for that. So all of the games that I play are usually encapsulated within the period. So I have them walk in and the instructions are there and the desks are moved in the circle exactly how they're supposed to be. And I demonstrate it first and I have them stand around and watch me play it real quick. And then I separate them into their groups and I have them do it. And I very judiciously walk around and I make sure they're doing it right. And so if you do it that way, you know, they want to play. They're eager to get to the playing part. So they'll watch you do it and then be like, all right, now it's you, go ahead, and then you can correct them on the fly. So if you do it that way with everything already ready, it makes it a lot faster and a lot easier. So yeah, you don't have to make this like a week-long thing. That role-playing game, by the way, that was for junior high schoolers, and it was to help them learn, I think it was elements of a story. So they got to tell their own story as they went through the adventure. It was amazing. So this teacher actually manipulated her whole curriculum to accommodate that, so she could play the role-playing game instead of doing the more traditional stuff. So she opened up her calendar so she could actually do it. So, however you can do it.
Hi, I just recently moved from teaching elementary school for 15 years into a more teacher support position. I work as a K-12 learning specialist and trying to work with teachers on kind of opening up their ideas of activities and engagement. Kind of, we have a lot of students who are pretty complex, have a lot of additional needs. And what I get from teachers the most often that they need the support with is, I wrote it down here, the sore losers, the reluctant players, and then also if you have any thoughts about applying this concept to professional development, because I would love to I want to get the adults to play too. Like, we forget sometimes that we need to play. So yeah, just any thoughts about the sore losers and reluctant players especially.
I usually go ahead.
Real quick. Just I can speak real quick to the professional development. At our school, we do a like once a month. We have resource hours every Thursday. It's like the first period is off, and we have meetings once a month. We do a it's like what do they call it? Whole teacher meetings, where the teachers get to pick what they want to do, and there's like walking around the track, there's yoga, there's swimming, we open a pool. I run video games, like in my class I run video games for the teachers.
I know, crazy, right? Like, this is something new they're trying.
So, and the teachers complain about it. The teachers complain about
Oh man,
it.
I gotta have fun.
So, but that's one of the things we do to get like, and it's not really traditional, quote unquote, professional development, but it does get the teachers playing. There was a watercolor session, a fall watercolor session run by the art teacher. It was rock climbing and on the wall, and it was like that got a lot of the teachers involved. Ilya, I'm sorry.
So the sore losers, maybe I'm a jerk, but like often I will have manipulated the game so they lose.
It's good. I mean,
Those are the kids that need to lose more.
Yeah.
Because either they don't have experience with it, or they just don't know how to handle it, or whatever. So
all they do is win.
yeah. And so for me, it's I feel like those are the kids that just like it's cool. Like, you can throw a fit, that's fine. The whole class is going to see you. Go for it. Like, it doesn't matter to me. I kind of feel like I don't really care about the sore losers. Again, real life consequences.
Well, and that also goes to the idea of culture change and building a teachable moment. Like, it's all about teaching kids how to handle something like losing, and teaching kids how to handle winning. Teaching kids what fairness actually looks like in real life versus in this game. And I think you're gonna have that sore loser kid maybe the first couple times. But what tends to happen is, kids tend to follow what the rest of the group is doing. And you don't always want to be that jerk. It's like, because now you've kind of isolated. And it's kind of like, okay, well, Mr. Whitaker or Mr. Callenborn kind of taught me how I'm supposed to handle losing here. And maybe that's the way I should figure out how to interact with the rest of my classmates.
In terms of moment to moment, just real quick, if a kid throws a die, or like they get killed in Werewolf and they're like, oh, and they put their head down, they start to talk. First of all, in Werewolf, dead people don't talk. So, dead people don't talk. But like kids that have tantrums before, I just go, can I see you in the hallway for a second? And by the time we get all the way out to the hallway, they realize how silly they just were, and I'm like, do you feel better now? So like, just taking a moment to call it out is usually enough to get it to stop.
I think also getting teachers to be okay with the fact that kids are going to have feelings about,
Yeah.
and to like let go of that control too is sometimes.
Yeah.
All right, one last question, and we're going to wind it up. Unfortunately, that nice lady in the red shirt, you still have one?
Oh, I didn't have a question, but a comment. Talking about time management and developing gamification. Something that I do that has worked really well is I gamified my grading system. So instead of giving out A's, B's, C's, whatever, I give out 97%, right? So I took that 97 and made it 9,700 points. So all throughout the semester, I don't give them assignments, I give them quests, and there's no deadlines, the quests just expire. And I found that I teach college, and that's taken a lot of stress off of college students for finishing work. And they hand stuff in sooner because they want to get those experience points. And going with the choice, I give them like, you can choose this quest or this quest, and that usually helps a lot. So that's something I don't have to do anything for that during the semester. I literally just changed my wording, and it made a big difference.
What subject do you teach?
I teach music appreciation.
Amazing.
Wow.
Amazing.
Okay, I'm in.
We had a new grade book a few years back, and one of the things I wanted to do to make it epic is I wanted to make, in the grade book, I made every at the start of the semester, every assignment worth like 50 million points. So it was like a 10-question quiz was worth 100 million points, and I put it in the grade book as that. A long story short, nobody had ever tried that before in the history of schools that used this grade book, and I crashed their entire system. So when I went to my tech people, I'm like, "What's going on?" She's like, "Well, you made it worth 100 million points." And I'm like, "So?" She's like, "They've never experienced that." I was like, "Well, ain't my fault. Get a better system."
They got to experience points.
She's like, "Can you just use 100? I'm like, "Fine."
Damn.
All right, we gotta go. Unfortunately.